This month I actually read like a ton of books. Some of them I loved. I read so many books that I'm so excited to tell you guys about, and you should definitely go read them. And some books were not great, and some books were underwhelming. So we've got kind of a mix of everything. And also, you ready for this? We've got an unhaul and a TBR in this video. So we are well and truly back into the This Video is a Mess series. But for the most part, it is an April wrap up. Okay, so first book that I read, and the book I actually talked about in my last wrap up, was Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I finished this book and it was so good. I was actually upset when I finished it. I was like, immediately went to the bookshop and started looking for other books by this author. I didn't end up buying any because I'm trying to like hold back on my buying, but they are definitely on the will be read eventually soon, hopefully, list, which needs a new title for that list, let me tell you. This book is a really kind of slow burning thriller. It's a modern classic. It is about a girl who never gets a name in the story, which is such a great writing twist because we are always comparing her to her new husband's late wife, Rebecca, and she is obsessed with Rebecca. Rebecca had like the life she wanted, Rebecca had, and there is this whole kind of plot of like what happened to Rebecca, and while you kind of can guess what happened about midway through, I was like, oh, I know where this is going, but that slow burn build up and tension that was built was so worth it. It kind of gave this like big finale which was so good, and I was obsessed. I read this and I was like, I have to read more Daphne du Maurier. The next book that I read and finished was The Lost Hero by Rick Riordan. I haven't read the Heroes of Olympus series, though I have read Percy Jackson twice now, so I really wanted to get this series started and hopefully finished by this summer. I really had low expectations for this one. I think what had happened was it had been on my TBR for so long that I just kind of was tired of seeing it, and everyone had said that this wasn't as good as Percy Jackson, but I found that it was actually really great. I kind of loved it, actually. I was so into it. I listened to it as an audiobook while I was walking, and I also read it, so I was kind of bouncing between the two, and it was so good. It kind of follows on from a new set of heroes who we haven't seen in the other series, and the quests that they go on, and it's so good. It's so good. If you've read Percy Jackson and liked it, and you haven't read these for some reason, like me, go for it. The next book I read and finished I actually don't have with me because I decided to bring that whole series to the Take a Book, Leave a Book at the library. Now, I didn't take a book, but I left 3 books, and they were Stalking Jack the Ripper, Hunting Prince Dracula, and Hiding from Houdini. These 3 books, I did not love them. I found the whole series to be quite underwhelming, and I feel like that whole Victorian era like girl who loves science thing is just overdone, and I am through with it. It actually annoyed me to the point where I've reset the book that I am working on in a completely different location in a completely different time period, and I just realized when I was reading Escaping from Houdini, is that the actual name? When I was reading this book, I realized that I was done. I was done with this premise. Wasn't interested in reading any more of it. I was done. It's like the 3rd book in a series, and they're on a cruise, and there's murders, and they have to figure out what's happening. And while it should have been really exciting, I just found that I didn't care about these characters. Didn't care about them. Didn't care what was happening, and it was really dramatic events. And I can see why a lot of people like these books, but I just wasn't feeling it. So I was like, I don't see myself buying the last book in the series. I hate having unfinished series on my oh my goodness, what happened to my voice there? Hate having unfinished series on my shelves, and so I brought it to the library and I left them there. I then read, and this was probably my favorite book of the whole month. This book, I was blown away, and I had kind of medium expectations for this one, you know. I'd heard good things about Shirley Jackson, which is the author of We Have Always Lived in a Castle. We've Always Lived in the Castle? This one. The same lady who wrote The Haunting of Hill House. And I didn't really know what this book was about, didn't really know what to expect. It's basically about this girl who is called Mary Catherine, or Mary Cat by her sister, and she lives with her sister and her uncle kind of on the outskirts of the town, and the whole town is terrified of this family because all of the family was murdered one day, and they were poisoned from the sugar bowl, and they think that this family had something to do with it. They think there is foul play, and so the whole village is terrified of this family, and they are aggressively terrified. And it's so good. It's so good. I can't really go into like what happens because it's quite short, and like basically the setting and the atmosphere is what drives this book forward, and it was fantastic. Oh my goodness, this is like become one of my favorite books ever. Characters as well. Mary Cat is like this real scary main character, and she is fantastic. I love an unpredictable main character. It's one of the things I loved most in the Young Elites. I loved the unpredictableness of the main character and the kind of menace, because you often get main characters that are so samey. Like they like the same things, they do the same things, they always go the same places, and they have like the same reaction. Mary Cat has like her own take on everything, and her things that she does and the way that she views the world is so different to so many main characters. She's like a character I've never really read from before, and I loved that. I love that kind of take and surprise from her. Yeah, definitely see myself rereading this loads. There is things I can learn from Shirley Jackson. Oh my gosh, love it, read it. Unfortunately, the next book, we have a bit of a dip. We have a bit of an underwhelmed dip in the next book, and that is Superman Dawnbreaker by Matt Dillapena. This is the last book in the DC Icons series, and I feel like with this whole series, we have this underwhelmed tone. There was so much of this book that was the build up to Clark Kent finding out who he is. Like, we're 200 pages in when Clark Kent finds out where he's from. Now, I don't know about you, but I kind of went into this knowing who Superman is. Like, you know what he can do, you know where he's from, you know what his weaknesses are, but I don't know why this approach was taken to this story. It was like finding out who he is was such like a big part of it, and while that should have been a part of it, yes, this is an origin story, but I feel like 200 pages into a 280 page book from a character that the readers are so familiar with was a bit of a no. It just came across as very dull and very boring, and I was not a fan. Superman is not my favorite superhero in general, but this book did him no favors in my opinion. So I'm gonna put that back down. We're gonna pretend that didn't happen. Next book I feel like was the underdog of the month. I had low expectations. It is a YouTube book. Well, not a YouTube book, but it's written by a YouTuber, and for that reason alone, I was a bit skeptical. It's also a children's book, which I love children's books, but I was hesitant because I wanted to like it, and I wasn't sure I was going to. And that book is Undercover Princess by Connie Glynn, who is on YouTube as Nudorella, and it is part of the Rosewood Chronicles series, the first book in that series. Now, this book has a very simple premise, but for all of the like hesitancy I had going into it, I loved this book. It's such a happy, good feeling book where you read it and you feel immediately nostalgic for a place you've never been. And I was so happy that I liked it. And I feel like I really genuinely enjoyed it. And if I'd have read this when I was younger, I would have been obsessed. And I actually, even now, I am tempted to go to the bookshop and get the next book immediately because I loved it. And it was so simple and it was a bit predictable, but for all of that, it was great. It is a boarding school book about two young girls who become very good friends. And I think one of the main things that I was pleasantly surprised by was Connie's narrative voice was so rhythmic and soothing and so perfectly suited to the story that she was telling. It didn't sound like I was listening to one of her videos, if that makes sense. She really constructed a beautiful tone in her writing style, and that is very difficult to do, and I was thoroughly impressed. So yeah, really recommend if you're into children's fiction to pick this up. Next book I read and finished, the final book I finished, was the collection of novellas for the Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken, and that is Through the Dark. There is 3 stories in this book. Again, like with Carrie Maniscalco's Stalking Jack the Ripper series, this book was the final nail in the coffin for the dystopian genre for me. I read this series, and while they were objectively very good short stories, there was 3. The first one didn't really feel connected to the second 2, which tied together, but you know, they were objectively very good short stories that added to the world. But I am just so done with dystopia. I'm not ever, I don't think, unless it's a very, very interesting plot, going to pick up another dystopian series. Maybe I'll reread some of my favorites, but I'm thoroughly finished with dystopian books. This kind of really cemented that to me. Like, I've kind of known for a while that I didn't have any interest in it anymore, but this really was like, you don't want more dystopian books. Stop reading them. Stop picking them up. That's what this book was for me, which was a little frustrating because there is one more book in this series. Now I don't have it, so I might just leave it for a long time and pick it up in a few years. But like, objectively good, but I was so fed up with the tropes and with the plots that kind of all go in the same direction, and I was done with it. So I think I gave it like 3 stars, even though that was maybe a bit unfair because I think I was just not feeling it. The next book that I read, and which I'm hoping to finish by Monday, which there's a specific reason why Monday, but hoping to finish by Monday, is Son of Neptune by Rick Riordan, the second book in the Heroes of Olympus series. We follow some new and some familiar characters as they go on more quests. I am enjoying it. It's good. One of the things that I love about this series is that they are so easy to read. You can like fly through 50 pages so quickly. So it's enjoyable. Haven't finished it yet, obviously, but I'm enjoying it so far. Also, look at this bookmark I made. Isn't it dope? I made like a friendship bracelet and like knotted keys into it, and it just turned out so much better than I thought it would, honestly. Showtime's over. This book, hoping to finish soon. Hoping to finish this series by the end of the summer, preferably by the end of May, and again, you will see why in just a second. Okay, so on Tuesday I leave for France for a month. I'm so excited. I'm traveling by myself, which is a bit scary, but I am also just so there for it. I'm so ready. I am heading to the south of France, and I will be there writing and drawing. I'm going on a bit of a like creative retreat, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I've decided to bring 5 books, so I thought you guys might be interested in seeing what books they are. The first 3 that I'm going to be bringing are the Next Hero of Olympus books, which are quite chunky, quite big, so that's why I'm hoping to finish Son of Neptune, because I feel like bringing another big chunky book, yeah, suitcases and whatnot. But I really wanted to finish this series and soon, so I thought I would bring those ones with me. I also like that they're quite big because it means I'm gonna have quite a bit of downtime when I'm away. So these will be entertaining but also substantial. The next 2 books I will be bringing are by Alexandra Bracken. They are Passenger and Wayfarer, which are time travel books, time travel adventure books. There's pirates and there's the most beautiful covers you've ever seen in your life. I know I just read an Alexandra Bracken book and I wasn't loving it, but I feel like these aren't dystopian, so we're out of that danger zone. So this I'm quite excited for. These ones are ones I've been looking forward to reading since they were announced, and I just never got to them. So now I'm going to get to them. I'm probably also going to be bringing Tortuella Infini. Did I say that right? I probably said it wrong. The John Green book, Turtles All the Way Down, but in French, because I'm going to be practicing French. I have been, but I'm also continuously reading that so as to kind of keep up my vocab. You know how it goes. But anyway, those are the books I was going to bring with me. The next 3 books I'm going to be mentioning are unhauled books, books that I'm going to be bringing to the Take a Book, Leave a Book in the library. Again, not going to be taking a book, just going to be leaving this series. And I was so unsure about whether I would bring these for months. Like, since my first unhaul of the year, I've been planning on unhauling these books, and they're kind of nostalgic because it's when I start watching BookTube, not when I start making videos, but when I was watching it, they were kind of like one of the first recommended series that I actually picked up on. And I liked the first book, and I really, really disliked the rest of the series. Like, I hated the second book. I thought it was so boring. And that's so harsh, isn't it? I'm sorry. But I really didn't like the third book either, and not for the ending, which most people didn't like it for. Yeah, nonetheless, they are a series that I know a lot of people like, and that is Divergent, Insurgent and Allegiant by Veronica Roth. These books, like I said, I liked the first book, didn't really like the second 2 books at all. Never really got into the whole Divergent thing, but when the movies came out, I was excited for the first one. I felt like the second one wasn't great, and the third one is like unspeakably bad. I actually watched a video by Insane Reader on the Divergent series and how it went down the toilet. But yeah, everything he was saying, I was like, yeah, I agree. I agree. I agree. And I guess it kind of like let me give myself permission to unhaul these books, because I was like, okay, I'm not the only one who felt this way. I'm okay to let these ones go now, because they like I said, Dystopian and me, we've not been friends for a while. We haven't really spoken. And now I feel like this is just a good time to take these out of my collection, because they're not books I enjoyed. You know, the first book, yeah. Second two books, no. They take up a lot of space. They're quite chunky. So hopefully someone else will enjoy them. And that's it. That is the unhaul section of this book. Wow, we talked about a lot of books today. It feels like we had a good chat. How did you feel about Endgame? Okay, yeah, I'll let you go. See you later. Thanks for watching. Bye.